Hello there, and welcome to Love Wargames. In this video of the What to Build series, we will have a look at the Alliance with the Alliance Frontline Squadron that was released in June, and I make a little cheating in looking at the Oriflamme Battlefleet Set, which was released in May, a little bit earlier than what I said I would have a look at. But they go very well together, so we will have a look at both at the same time. This is our second video in this series, so if you'd like, you can already have a look at the Suleiman Battlefleet Set, What to Build. And this is more to the Sultanate, but it's also a very good box. But today we have a look at the French, and it's quite close to my heart faction because, as you can hear from the accent, I am from France. So what do you get in these boxes? Here I recommend to buy at the same time the Oriflamme Battlefleet Set, which is like you can put it on the table and play with it, but it's not that many points. And at the same time to buy the Alliance Frontline Squadron, which is more like reinforcement, so you cannot use them at the same time. Just on their own, but you can add them to the Oriflamme to get quite a powerful 750 points fleet, which is the standard game size for Dystopian Wars. And this brings you to about 72 pounds, which is going to be about 80 euros, and you already have a good fleet to play with. First, you get an Oriflamme Grand Battlecruiser, which is the namesake of the whole fleet. Very beautiful ship and quite useful. We'll see it in a minute. You can build 4 frontline cruisers. You get 2 per box, and there are 4 different models you can build them as, and we will see which ones are really good, which ones are actually mandatory, and which ones you actually might not want to build yet if you don't want to magnetize. And then you get 8 Écuyères frigates, which you get 4 per boxes. They are very fragile mass 1 ships, but they are very cheap and they get a very useful rules that quite a few, like not many mass 1 ships get, and we will see this rule when we talk about them later. First, let's have a look at the Oriflamme Grand Battlecruiser, which is a beautiful ship. As you can see, when it was announced, there were really a lot of talks about, wow, this is a beautiful battleship, and it absolutely is. I've seen it painted on the table, and damn, it looks good. It's a very good centerpiece. What do you get rule-wise, though? You get only one version to make. You can change some turrets, we'll talk about this in a minute, but the raw stats that you get is quite resilient, at least for the French. The French usually have more mobility and great firepower, but they're a little bit more fragile for the cost. Here, this is a good counterpart. First of all, it has good, like, normal classical defensive stats, which is good for a French ship. It has 7 armor and citadel 13, which is fine, and it has in total 11 hull points and 7 before it degrades, so that is good. It also has reinforced water lines, which means that it is less vulnerable to torpedoes. He will get less damages from them. And it also has ablative flank armor, which does help, but as we will see, the ship has a lot of weapons, as you can see in the back, in the front, in the sides, and it actually wants to be forward facing most of the time. And yeah, this ablative flank armor is useful, but it's not as useful as you might think. Another thing that is good for him is that he has access to coordinated support, and which can help even more against torpedoes or air raids, and it has access to some great escorts, some of them in this battle fleet, but the French also have very good skimming escort ships, and yeah, they can really go well in pair. We'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about the Magenta battle fleet. Its firepower, however, is quite average. It has, yeah, as we saw, like a lot of guns everywhere, like gun batteries, bigger gun batteries, torpedo turrets, but they don't synergize very well together. One very sad thing is that you cannot turn it into a hit-lance boat very easily. There are better ships to do that. Even the frontline cruisers that we'll see in a second are better to become hit lances boats. This one, it's a little bit, it doesn't really know what it wants to be, at least efficiently. What it can do as a firepower ship is to turn into a submarine hunter. It does have a maritime patrol rules, which allows it to ignore the submerged trait, which is very good, but only if there is an SRS token next to the ship that it is targeting. and there is no access to SRS token in this fleet. Precisely, you have to get the skimming ships of the French, which is where the aircraft carriers are for now. And but if you can trigger this maritime patrol, you can really use this as a torpedo boat. You can replace the forward heavy gun battery with a heavy magnetic bombard, which is extreme range. You also have torpedoes, which are extreme range, and you can replace like those as well as torpedoes. You can really have extreme range firepower, so that's 40 inches of firepower. And with maritime patrol, you can really do a lot of damage, specifically to submarines. It's one build you can do, and with a lot of escorts and reinforced water lines, it can really like have advantage in torpedo exchanges against, for example, Ukrainian fleets or British fleets. Now, what does the Oriflamme unlock as a battle fleet? It unlocks the French battle fleet, nothing very special. You need to have at least one Chevalier, which is the most basic frontline cruiser, and you can add up to 3 additional French units. That's great. Do note that you can have no more than 1 skimming unit. That is a little restriction, but it means you can have 1 skimming unit. That's very good if you want to bring, for example, a skimming aircraft carrier to unlock the maritime patrol rule, or if you want to bring one of these very good escorts. You do get a command override, which is a quite powerful ability, which when you throw dice and you really see that the result of your dices are very bad, you can just reroll it once per game. It's a good trick to have at least in your pocket. Now that we've seen the main flagship, let's see what cruisers you can do. The most standard, as we said, was the Chevalier, which is mandatory for the French battle fleet. You need at least 1 unit of this, so it can be a unit of 1 or a unit of 3, depending how you want to build your fleet. This is quite easy ship to pilot. First of all, like, it looks good. I just love these turrets. And it's quite easy because both turrets are forward facing. We said this about the Turkish ships, and it's the same for the French. It's quite easy to pilot. It also is quite agile, being a French ship. And this is a good ship to put heat lances, because both of these heavy gun batteries can be turned into heat lances, and that's a lot of firepower. What you will want to do is to keep it around any French flagship to unlock the coordinated support rule, which means that you will unlock like additional, it will increase your defense, and in a French battle fleet you would actually have even more defenses next to your flagship with coordinated support. So they also have, of course, all these French ships have reinforced water lines. So with this coordinated support, they can really be a pain to deal with airstrikes, and especially with torpedoes or any submerged weapons. So very good ship. Have at least one, really, at least one, mandatory. And if you want to build 3 of those, you absolutely can. They're very good. Then you have the Loire, which is more like a speedy ship. It's quite cheap, like quite cheaper at 90 points. As we can see, like it's much less than the Chevalier. Of course, it has 1 less heavy gun battery, which is not great, let's admit. But it does get Vanguard, so it has a movement before the game begins, and it also gains Minesweeper. And mines got buffed in this latest version of the game, the 3.03. And you definitely don't want to engage, like to walk on a mine. Now it can really like one-shot some ships, like in one go. So minesweepers are very useful, and this guy can just like you know where the mines are because they are placed before deployment, and you put a Loire like right next to it. It will make a pre-game move, and during its first activation, it will just remove the mine. So that's great. It's very good for flanking because it can go very fast and to go very early on the objective. So very useful little ship, all in all. Finally, you have the Picardy, which is the cheapest French version. You see, it doesn't have this small heavy gun battery in the rear compared to the Loire. And the Picardy is quite weak. It does not get a lot of special rules. It does get maritime patrol, which is very good against submerged ships, as we've seen. And since it is so cheap, it is very good to put a magnetic bombard on it. So you replace with this with a heavy magnetic bombard, which means that for 90 points you will have a good ship all the way in the back with this very powerful artillery piece that can shoot up to 40 inches. Still resilient to torpedoes. It also has some torpedo turrets to add to this. And it has maritime patrol, which means that the enemy submarines are not safe at all. So very good to have at least one of those to go submarine hunting, especially if you didn't turn your Oriflamme into a submarine hunter himself. Finally, you get the Écuyères frigates. You get 8 of them. But before that, I just wanted to say why I didn't recommend to build the Charlemagne. The Charlemagne is the largest of the frontline cruisers that you can build. And if you did build some Charlemagne because you love big ships, don't worry, they are usable, very usable. It's just that they are a little bit harder to use for newer players. Indeed, they are bristling with weapons. They've got a little gun battery to the back, too big to the front. They got some torpedo turrets that can shoot on their side, left and right, and front and back. But it's very hard to put all the firepower to bear at the same time. And you do need to put all the firepower to bear if you want to make the best use of these ships. They make 125 points each before you start to add any hit lance anywhere, so that's expensive. And the little tricky rule that they have is ablative armor on the flank only. And this is very good, especially if you do want to flank the enemy. It does mean that you will not be able to use one of your torpedo turrets, but then it means you are much more resilient. But ablative armor is very good against specific builds. It can absolutely save you against some enemy builds, such as the Bavarians, which have a lot of different small gunnery weapons. So ablative armor can really nullify completely their attack. But against some lists it will be much less useful, and again quite harder to use and quite expensive, to be honest, for what it does. So that's why I say don't build Charlemagne if you are a new player. Better to stay with the other ships, which are much easier to use. And the final ship that you get are the small and very cute Écuyères. I mean, look at these little gun batteries, they are adorable. And they are very good, very good. First of all, they are extremely cheap at 25 points each. So yes, they are fragile. We already said this about the Sultanate last time and their Temir frigates, because they have only 2 hull points, which is low, very low. It can go down very fast. But at 25 points per miniature, do you really mind? I'm not sure. And they do get Giant Slayer, which means they reroll blanks against some of the larger ships, starting at mass 3. So they can be surprisingly punchy, especially when you start to have quite a few of them with all their gun batteries. They can actually do some chip damage against some big ships, which is always good. But the main advantage that they do have is that they can be attached not only to flagships, but to any French unit, which is very good. Let's remember that with the coordinated support, as long as you stay close to a flagship, you get bonuses to your ADV and your SDV. And if you get attached to any unit, both of the attached and the parent unit get additional bonus to their ADV and SDV. And if you add this to the reinforced waterline that everybody has, the French fleet can be not immune, but can be very resilient to any type of air or especially submerged attacks. So these are very important ships. I wouldn't recommend to play them like 4 or 6 of them on their own, but as a very cheap 100 points upgrade to attach to some units for your flagship, for example, or when you start to have large units of Chevalier or any ship really, it's always really good to have these Écuyères. Plus they can add their gun batteries firepower to your main attack. So really good to have, and yeah, they're just very good for their points. Finally, I wanted to make a little list example about what you can have for 750 points, so you can really project yourself. So this is not using every single ship that you have, but it's already, like with this, you can already go confidently into any game and know that your ships will be useful. First, an Oriflamme Grand Battlecruiser with 4 Écuyères, which is like the escorting frigates we just talked about. This is very good as a frontline, like put it at the middle of your fleet so that it can give its coordinated support to everyone around. And with the Écuyères, it will be even more resilient to most of the enemy attack. So very good. And let's remember that the Oriflamme is quite resilient for a French ship. Then you have your damage dealers, the 2 Chevaliers, which are all with hit lances. That's a lot of points, but that's a lot of firepower. If you do manage to get in point blank range, they will absolutely delete anything they shoot at. The main danger is that they get killed before. That's why your other ships, especially the Oriflamme, needs to attract some firepower so that your Chevalier can do the job. Then in the backline you have one Picardy with the magnetic bombard. It's quite good as an artillery pieces. It will not have any SRS in this fleet to trigger maritime patrol, but it's always very good to have an artillery piece in the back. And finally, you have the Loire, which is the fast Vanguard ship. Use it, of course, as a minesweeper and otherwise to accompany the Oriflamme, but a little bit more on the flank. It's very fast. It can attract some firepower, which would be good if it can attract some firepower away from the Chevalier. And I gave it heavy rocket, so you can start to use these very nice weapons as well. Get used to it, and they do have more dices at long range. So if you do use the Loire as a flanker, so really on the flank of the table, it will still be able to shoot quite far compared to just using their normal gun batteries. So that's 750 points exactly, and it's quite fun to play. I've played already against somehow similar list, and it can get some use to maximize the efficiency, especially to not expose the Chevalier too early. But it's very good to start learning the game. You have a lot of different weapons, a lot of different rules, so you can start to familiarize yourself with. And yeah, if you're interested in Dystopian Wars and want to start one of these beautiful French fleet, that's there is not much wrong with this fleet. Like it is a little bit fragile, but it's a lot of fun, a lot of beautiful models, and just all around great. So that's for the French, at least the surface French ships. And in the next what to build list, we will talk about the more flying version of the French ships, the skimming ships, and this will be our next video about the Magenta Battlefleet. Thank you very much for watching. If you like, uh, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe. It really helps as this channel is only starting. It's only the second video so far. And very soon we will start to release video battle reports. And for all the different formats, please let us know what you like, what you don't like, what we can improve, and if you have ideas for specific video formats, something you would like to learn more about. I don't know, some tactical analysis or some more competitive list or some fluff videos, whichever. Let me know and I will make sure that we have this on the channel. Thank you and keep spreading the love. Bisous.